Hey guys, welcome back to another broadcast, or should I say interview. Today we have writer Mark Pellegrini with us. Most of you already know exactly who Mark is and the books that he puts out, but Mark, I want to let you kind of go through your resume real quick for the anyone who shows up that might not know who you are and what books you've been putting out over the past few years.
Sure. Well, it's good to be back, Doug. I mean, we know each other, but for anybody who's new, my name is Mark Pellegrini, and I'm the co-creator and author of Kamen America with Timothy Lim, who's the co-creator and artist. Also, the co-creator and author of Black Hops, USAGI, with Tim. And I've also written a bunch of horror short stories that have been published in Cursova magazine, and I've got a novel, a horror novel, out there called They'll Get You, available on Amazon. And those are the big ones. I've also done some political parody books in the past, Wall Might and Thump and things like that. That some people thought were funny. But for the most part, people know me for Common America and Black Hops.
Cool. All right. So I've had you on a couple times, and I usually try and figure out a way to ask something a little bit new for the audience. Although, people like hearing what you're up to over the course of the year. So, for example, you guys have had a really good year. Right now, you got the Common America Volume 6 and Omnibus campaign. Last time I checked, you basically had roughly $113,000 in sales on Kickstarter with 2,060 something backers, and then on Indiegogo that was roughly another 20,000 with 416 backers last time I checked, and that's just this campaign. Also, there was the crossover campaign that also did well. Thank you for doing such an amazing job with Father Redder and Father Crane and the Soul Finders. Cannot thank you enough for that.
Well, thank
But
you for creating Father Redder and the Soul Finders because they were great to write with.
yeah, no, you knocked that out of the park, and it's been really cool to see people getting their books and sharing them and loving what you did with the story, and obviously Timothy Lim's art as well. But I was wondering if you just want to, I don't know, just say a few thoughts about your 2022 campaigns and the success of them, and just I don't know, you guys seem to continuously keep the momentum rolling.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we're really grateful. We're surprised that anybody cares is the big thing. When you put your stuff out there, it's always just out in the wind. And so to see such a positive reaction from people, it really means a lot. We're floored by it. That we're able to keep doing these pre-order campaigns and have them each be as successful as they are is just amazing. But yeah, we keep the momentum going by just never stopping working. Especially Tim. He draws a page a day, every day, 365 days a year, even on Sundays. Sundays is when he draws our web series. So we always want to have something Common America out there, just to keep the readers satiated between the main volumes, to keep the interest and momentum going. So, for instance, we've got Common America 6, which is up for pre-order right now, on both Kickstarter and Indiegogo. Common America 7 is already done. It's currently in the midst of being translated into Japanese. And then it's going to go off to the printers, and it's going to be ready by January, so we can do the Common America 7 campaign in January. Following that, in 2023, we'll have Common America 8, which is going to be an immediate follow-up to the events of Common America 7, and it's going to close out our second saga, the Zener Ranger saga, and that's going to be our summer book. Normally we do Black Ops over the summer, but we're actually considering doing Black Ops 6, which will conclude the second story arc of Black Ops, more in the winter of 2023. We're still kind of deciding, because if we want to have that break in between 7 and 8 with Black Ops in the middle, or if we want to have Black Ops afterward. So we're working on that. And in the meantime, we have a weekly webcomic on the Webtoons platform. It's a spin-off of Common America called Common Academy, and it's done in the style of a slice of life high school anime kind of story, featuring the Common America and Black Ops characters. That started about a month ago, and people have been really enjoying it. It allows us to just do something funny with the characters and it is canon with the main series. We do explain at the end of the previous Webtoon series that it is canon. You'll have to read to find out how it ties in with the rest of Common America. But it lets us do something fun on the side, and also it gives us a weekly Common America update, new Common America material every single week, in between the main campaigns, just to keep people interested. And
Cool.
while we're doing all that, we are also translating all of our books into Japanese for the Japanese market because we noticed on Amazon, our Amazon sales for Common America were majority Japanese, even above American sales. Our number one customers were Japanese customers, and they were buying the books in English. So we decided, why don't we try to make reading our books easier on them? Because they were using, a bunch of our Japanese readers were telling us they were using this system called Google Lens, which is some app on your phone that you can use to auto-translate English into Japanese. And you're like, well, maybe we can do you one better and actually publish it in Japanese for you. So we've translated every issue of Common America so far into Japanese, and so they're going to be part of the Common America 6 campaign is digital omnibus copies of everything in Japanese. And our Japanese readers are really excited because we've got a Japanese language Common America account on social media, on Twitter. And we're just busy, busy, busy. We're collecting the previous cycle of Common America Webtoons comics, which we call Common America the Web Series. We're doing a print collection of those that'll be available with Common America 7 in January. That one's going to be called Common America Gaiden. And that one's also going to have some brand new bonus strips that weren't published online that'll only be available in that print edition. So we got that going on too. Plus Black Ops 6, which is going to be the big crossover with iconic comics characters such as Father Redder from Soulfinder again, but also a bunch of Antarctic Comics characters like Versema from Punchline and Rogowski from Rags. And other surprise characters are going to be in there. So that's going to be a big one. So we are really busy.
Yeah, no, I had a little note sheet done up here, and you just were ticking off all of my little bullet points
Sorry,
on
I
things
was
that I
just
wanted to
rambling
ask.
on.
No, it's really good. So you densely packed in a lot of information there, a lot of like cool stuff that's coming up on the horizon. Speaking of the Japanese translations, that's something that, I mean, again, I have my blinders on in terms of indie comics, but I have not seen any Americans in indie comics doing what you guys are doing in terms of translating
Well,
into Japanese. Would I be wrong on that, or
I don't think you're
um,
wrong, but I can tell you this. As soon as we do it, everybody else is going to do it, and everybody else is going to get the credit. So that just seems to be the way things happen, is that we're small time. You know, we've been called small timers and minor leaguers, and maybe we are, but we are being watched feverishly, vigilantly by the bigger folks in indie comics. And then whenever we do something, they do it. And then because they have a bigger platform, they get the credit for it. But hey, that's just the way it goes. But it's really, yeah, you know, you got to kind of just subdue your ego a bit. And it's like, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. And just know that we're making our Japanese readers very happy. We're making our American readers very happy by putting out more material. And so as long as our readers are happy, you know, and it's all good.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Well, at least now there is audio evidence of us discussing this particular topic. So if anyone who cares out there, when people start translating their books into Japanese, they could hopefully use this interview. Be like, hey,
Yeah,
no,
at least a
Mark and Tim
timestamp.
were the vanguard in terms of indie comics getting translated into Japanese and put up on digital websites and things along those lines. So I think it's super cool. And I've said myself, I want to do the same thing. But so basically, you and Tim generally kind of beat the path. And then many of the paths, I'm just like, hey, that's a really nice path. I'm going to go down that path too. But I try and always say like, hey, I'm cribbing my notes off of Tim and Mark because what they
Hey, I
do
mean,
works.
we do the same thing, but with Doug Tenable. We watch what he does. Oh, he's doing his in affordable hardcovers. Okay, Common America is going to be in affordable hardcovers from now on. But we always cite Doug as our inspiration. He was doing custom boxes for Earthworm Jim and Bigfoot Bill. So Iconic Comics like, hey, let's do some custom boxes too. Idea, courtesy Doug Tenable. So you know, it's cool. We all have our inspirations. We all look at each other and see what's working out and try to apply it to our own campaigns. And how everybody in the indie comics community grows is by sharing what's working and adapting it in your own style. Just, be honest about it.
Now, one thing that you guys are doing that obviously other people do, but I would say you do it with a sort of joy almost, is pound the pavement and go out there and do a lot of shows. And I sometimes see people that do shows and they're always grumbling. I don't know if I've ever seen you grumble about a show. So you just went to the All Things Nerdy Comic Expo in Arkansas over the weekend. I don't know if you want to kind of talk about your feelings about going to shows and hitting the pavement and shaking hands and all of that sort of thing.
Well, I mean, just to say real quick, that was a great show. It was a store signing, and the fact that people actually showed up to see us, that went out of their way on a Saturday, on a beautiful Saturday that was like 78 degrees, and they could have been out doing anything else in the world. They stopped by to see us. So a lot of them brought in books that they bought from us off Kickstarter or Indiegogo or off the Iconic Comics web store just for us to sign. Some came by to check out our books. A few came by to ask us questions about writing and drawing and publishing. And that's really, really humbling and really, really encouraging. It gives you a huge boost when you go and you actually meet the people who read your books. There's one thing to talk to them on social media or to see them as a customer and answer their questions online, but to know that they're an actual real human being and not some bot on online or anything, that gives you an anchor, and we love that. It also it's incredibly flattering that anyone would want to invite us to a convention, to a store signing, to anything like that. It means that they've seen our work, they think our work is good enough for us to get some sort of spotlight, and then that it might attract other people to come and see us, which in terms would earn them revenue. That we're somehow seen as a draw, that's not something that I've ever been before is considered a draw to a revenue stream for anybody. So I I honestly would never understand why anyone wouldn't enjoy it, wouldn't jump at the chance to pound the pavement and go to these conventions and go to these store signings, as long as it's within their schedule and within their, geography to go to them. We love doing it. I have, yeah, like you said, I've met a few people who've, I guess, been mostly folks who have been doing comics decades longer than I have, and they're burned out by going and doing shows. So maybe that's up to them if they like doing it anymore or not. We're still young. We've still only just started doing these sorts of things, but I just can't see myself ever getting tired of meeting our readers and talking to them. And sometimes we don't even talk about our books. At Bell County this year, there's some folks who came by and just wanted to talk to me about Lupin the Third and about Star Wars and about Ghostbusters and things, and just had fun chatting with them. Most of my social media feed on Twitter even isn't even me chatting about Kamen America. It's mostly just me chatting about Godzilla and horror movies and stuff. So it's all just social interaction. It's all fun.
Now, one thing I do want to say is, for those that don't know this, I think maybe a couple people know this, but when we were in Lubbock this past I don't know, a few months ago or whatever it was, you actually gave up the bed and slept on a couch because I have a finicky bad back, and you just did it. You didn't even you're just like, yeah, I'll be on the couch, no problem. And I just wanted to thank you for that and kind of give people a glimpse of kind of what a nice guy you are, because it wasn't even something where I'd be like, Mark, can I sleep on the bed because my back is all jacked up? And then you're just like, hey, man, I'll be on the couch.
Well, to be honest, if the alternative was that I would have to lay in the same bed as either you or Tim and cuddle with you, I will gladly sleep on the couch.
And I felt really bad because I
Don't
rewarded you for your kindness by giving you COVID. So
no, it's all good, man. I can't think of how many times I've gone on trips with Tim, either be it to Disney World or just one of these conventions, and I've gotten sick. What was it? When it was you, me, and Matt when we went to Biloxi last year, and the road trip back, I was nauseous and I had a migraine, and I just basically I was in a coma in the back seat of the van for the entire like 8 hour drive home, and you guys got me Gatorade, and you guys nursed me back to health. And I have no idea how I got sick or why I got sick on that trip home. So I mean, we all we all have our moments where it's like please, can someone take care of me? I don't feel so good. It happens.
Cool, man. Well, kind of pivoting now to, we talked about like all the different kind of things that you are writing, whether it's webtoons, whether it's your own personal work, your collaborations with Tim, all this sort of stuff. I was wondering if you can say something about yourself and your evolution as a writer. So what are some of the things that maybe you left behind over the years creatively? What are the things that you have held on to? And where do you see yourself going as a writer?
I think like just as a writer who actually published my stuff and got it out there on the internet, and this goes back whew, a long time ago, like we're talking like 13, 15 years ago. I used to write reviews. I would write. That's actually how I met Tim. Was we both worked for the same movie review site back in 2007, and that's how we got to know each other. But I had my own website where I would write reviews of, and it's still up there. I reviewed every single Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comic ever written. It's on my site, TMNT Entity, and I look back at that, and I stopped doing reviews once I started publishing my own comics. And if you want to talk a humbling experience, that's a humbling experience. When I spent many years writing reviews of these old independent comics from the 80s and the 90s, and I read them, and there are times when I am an absolute just asshole, and I am saying really nasty things. I'm blurring the line between, what the publisher, what the writer was going for. Just because I didn't like the comic didn't mean that I needed to make personal assessments of the writer, of the artist. And I just look at those old reviews, and I've left them up there, but I'm also kind of mortified by them because now that I've published comics and I've had people review my books being incredibly unkind sometimes, and also saying a lot of, I mean, I mentioned at the start of this, we did political parody books. Oh boy, you want feedback on those? Holy crap. We have been called everything under the sun, every dirty assessments of our character based by people who've never met us or haven't even read our work. They just assumed what our work was about and the kind of people we are. And I'd like, so that's how that feels, And I
And
look back at
sometimes they would end up coming to my YouTube channel and telling me that because I'm friends with you, that means that I'm a bad person or like
yeah,
all sorts of weird stuff. So
yeah, I know and those people are out there, but I look back at my reviews and like, man, why couldn't I have just been nicer? Even if I didn't like the book, why couldn't I have been a bit more friendly in my criticism? And I don't delete my old reviews. It has, I don't know, immature and inexperienced as they are, I don't like to delete my old work because, that's how you grow, right? Is you sometimes have to look back at your old stuff, cringe at it, and just think about how much you've grown and how much better you've got. And it's just also, um, just desserts. I spent so many years writing critical, sometimes mean reviews of indie comics, and now I'm an indie comics publisher, and I receive some very critical and very mean reviews from people. So, it's only fair. If I had the freedom of speech to go and make those sorts of reviews about other people's books, then other people have the freedom of speech to go and make those sorts of reviews about my books. It's only fair.
yeah, and you get quite in tune, or you're able to pick up. There's people where you're like, I know this guy hates my guts, and I know exactly what review he's going to give it, and then they
Every
give
time.
it.
Yep.
And no, for me, the same thing. Humbling experience when you, especially with indie comics, because you're wearing so many hats in terms of, marketing and doing all the publishing stuff and getting all the logistics involved with fulfillment and distribution. Obviously, Iconic Comics, does the fulfillment now, but in the early days, there was so many hats that you're wearing, and so you think about the other indie creators and maybe criticisms that you had
Yeah, all
of
the
them in the
work that I
past.
didn't know that they put into it, like people don't know how much we were talking before we went on live, the struggle of getting the books printed, coordinating with the printer, coordinating with the fulfiller, trying to format a PDF, trying to get the text files to put your font on the PDF, things like that. All these little things that you have to do as the independent publisher on your own, and just how much work goes in behind the scenes that doesn't involve writing or drawing the comic. Writing and drawing the comic is almost like only 25% of the struggle. The other 75% is logistics and fulfillment. And most people don't factor that much work into it. And now I look back at, these reviews I wrote for books published in the 80s by indie comics people who were just trying to do their best, and maybe they came out with a bad book, but I realize now just how much work they went into just trying to get the thing printed and shipped. And I'm like, ah, man, I'm a dick.
There was a couple little things that fell through the cracks on Black Tide, and I always was kicking myself for it. And it got fixed in the saddle stitch versions, and then if I do an omnibus, it'll be fixed. There's a couple like little minor things, and I always think about like, I spent so much time. I was learning how to do hardcover books for the first time, and say I was putting 50% of my energy into that, and if I would have just dialed it back, to 48% and found a way to like do that distribution properly, like those things would not have fallen through the cracks. But then you see a review of somebody who they don't realize all that went into just getting gilded pages and glow in the dark ink in just the right places so it didn't bleed into the spot gloss and cause a mess and all this sort of stuff. And it's like they're just reviewing that he forgot so-and-so's last name here, and it should have been there because it would have clarified that. And
oh,
so
there's a
it's like,
typo on page 36. Oh, man, weren't they paying attention? It's like, oh.
yeah,
Yeah.
Anything along those lines. And then I'm kicking myself for literally 8 months over this, and they've moved on, but it's like, no, I've been kicking myself for 8 months. So sorry to get distracted there in that particular.
But there's nothing more humbling than getting your book published and then seeing what people think about it. And the way you react really determines how successful you're going to be, I think. You can either be really defensive and attack the people who are being critical of your book, look for every negative review and go into the comments section of every negative review you can find online and get argumentative. Or you can try and say, like, okay, yeah, I had a typo on page 36. That's my bad. I'm going to do a better job proofing my scripts moving forward, proofing the PDFs. Like, yeah, they're being really nasty about it, but that is a legitimate error on my part. So I'm just going to have to work harder in the future so that I don't give my most vehement critics any ammunition to attack me. They're going to attack me anyway, but at least it can be for something else besides typos. Something like that. You just kind of have to set your ego aside and actually work to improve yourself, because if you choose like a hill to die on and you want to insist that no, it's not my fault, it's the customer's fault, and attack them and tell them that they're wrong, or if you just want to spend your time fighting with every single critic online, then you're never going to get any better and you're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah, no, I think if you're just honest with yourself, where you screwed up, and when someone points it out, there's no point in arguing. You're like, yeah, you got me. I'm just going to take my lumps and then get better, like you said, on the next one. So now, sort of in line with that, in order to become the kind of guy you are today, you obviously had role models. I was wondering, who were your influences early on as a writer?
So, I mean, obviously, like, because I was born in '85, so the comics that I was introduced to were early '90s ones, like the Jim Lee X-Men. So that was a huge influence from reading comics, is Chris Claremont and Fabian Nicieza and Scott Lobdell. You go back and you look at those books now, and they're very much of their era, but they were the books that I was reading at the time. But I remember the book that got me outside, that was like the Trojan horse of superhero books to kind of get you away from superhero books without knowing it. It was Sam Keith and Bill Mesner-Loeb's The Max, published by Image Comics. And when you look at it on the surface, it looks like it's a superhero book because it's about a guy in purple spandex with a big claw and big teeth. But then you read it, and it's a psychodrama and a fantasy book, and it's not at all a superhero book. Um, and I remember reading that and just sort of getting tricked into reading a book that was outside my genre. And that's how I found out that comics can be other genres and that I can read stuff besides superhero books and books that the comics themselves can be very cerebral and very interesting, even when it's not good guy fights bad guy kind of stuff. And Keith and Mesner Loebs, I do credit with really exposing me to a bigger world of comics. When I For the kind of stuff I do now, what I look for when I'm trying to find uh, inspiration is I try to find writers who can do a lot with the least amount of words. Because the number one critique I get back from Tim every single time I send him a script is he's like, Mark, too many words. Like, trim it down, trim it down. The bubbles are going to take up too much space on the page and cover up the art. Do it in fewer panels, do it in fewer words. And so I'm always trying to slim everything down and trim it down. So I look at the writers who can do that and who can do it really well. I can even go back so far as you read something like Carl Barks's Donald Duck and Uncle Scrooge books, and those go back to the Silver Age, where we all expect Silver Age books to be like, Stan Lee books, where they're super wordy, super talky, just tons of redundant text. But then you pick up a Carl Barks Duck book, and the only words on the page are the words that need to be on the page, and the rest of it tells a story through the art. And I'm like, okay, Tim's art can tell the story. I don't have to have words in every single panel. I can leave it up to Tim to tell the story with his art, and I'll give panel directions in my script, but I don't have to have the character saying something every single time I do a panel, every single time they're on the page. I don't have to have narration. I go back and I look at Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 2 with their really, really verbose dossier narration that accompanies everything going on. And I'm like, oh, God, this is a chore. And eventually I dropped those by Black Ops 3. But that's in manga is very much art focused, with the dialogue being slimmed down and trimmed down. And so I look at, well, how does manga do it so economically? And so I try to get my inspiration from that, just partly to appease Tim, because I am collaborating with Tim, and partly to improve my ability to tell a compelling story with the least number of visible words on the page.
Cool. Now, speaking of words on the page, I was wondering if there is a book that whatever your most recent book that you read was, doesn't even have to be comic book. It could be fiction, it could be nonfiction, pretty much anything. Is there a book that's on your radar that you enjoyed? That's the caveat. What is the last book that you read that you enjoyed? And it doesn't have to be a comic book that you would like to recommend to the audience.
Let me see. I mean, I've been going back and obviously been reading a lot of manga lately. And I mean, the last book that I've read that I enjoyed is completely the opposite of everything I just said about not using so many words. I'm enjoying it because of all the words that are in it. It's Tomb of Dracula, Volume 1, the complete collection that Marvel put out. And these are the books by Marv Wolfman on scripts and Gene Colan on art, and they're excellent. They're horror comics, though, and that's different than the kind of books that I do, because every page is loaded with text, including narrative text, but the narrative text is written like a horror novel. The prose is very good, very detailed, sets the mood, and I wouldn't want to read this book without all those words. They don't feel superfluous. They set the mood, and they're part of the atmosphere of the comic. But this is a very different kind of comic than the kinds that I write, so I understand why it's so different. But it's very good. In the most recent manga that I've been reading, is I went back and I found a hardcover copy of Kamen Rider, the original Shotaro Ishinomori manga from basically the 60s and 70s, and I've been reading that, and this one is incredibly slim on words. There are just pages after pages after pages of action without any dialogue, and this has been very useful for the Common America manga project that we're working on, which is also set to be due sometime in 2023. We don't have a deadline on that one. That's kind of just a side project we've been doing, but it's going to be published in the manga tankobon format. So the page dimensions are different. The amount of words you can put on the page are much smaller, and that's one of the reasons why I've been trying to focus so much on trimming my dialogue, because the manga project demands it. Just because the pages are going to be smaller dimensions, there's going to be fewer rooms, fewer space for panels and dialogue. So I'm looking at things like this, where it's like it's okay just to have pages of action and pantomime that move the story forward. Just figure out how the pros do it, how the masters do it. And Ishinomori is considered one of the masters of manga, so I've been reading his books and trying to take notes on that. And I mean, Kamen Rider, yeah, you might. If anybody wants to pick it up, it's from Seven Seas. It's in a really big hardcover. Yeah, they look. Maybe it looks primitive or it reads primitively compared to more modern stuff, but these are the stories that inspired most mangaka in this day and age. He's considered up there with Osamu Tezuka as one of the great inspirations of manga. So I do recommend picking up Kamen Rider or the Super Sentai volume that Seven Seas also put out, and just kind of seeing how they did it back in the day and how well these stories hold up now.
Cool, man. Well, you talk about people that inspired you. I know for a fact that you and Tim have inspired other indie creators. So I know you got a lot of stuff on your plate. You have work and all sorts of things. So I don't want to keep you too long, but I want to end on a positive note. Do you have any sort of parting advice or parting thoughts for the people that I see on a regular basis, whether it's on Twitter or whenever you guys do stream in your comments section, who are sort of inspired by what you and Tim have accomplished in such a short amount of time?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you. We are still learning ourselves. Neither of us are professionally educated in art or script. Tim is self-taught, I'm self-taught. So we're learning along the way. We'll never consider ourselves to be the absolute utmost, the zenith of anything that we do. So we're very humbled that people want to learn from us. At the same time, though, we're eager to learn from others as well. But so I guess the general advice that I can give to anybody out there, just as a writer, I'm not an artist. Um, the advice that I can give is always strive to do better. Have the ego to understand that wherever you are now, you're still not at the peak. You're not at the top of the mountain. You can always learn more. You are making mistakes, whether you think you're doing them or not. So reread your old stuff. Look back at your previous stuff with a critical eye. Try to find your missteps and then try to correct them. When you get critical feedback, set your ego aside, listen to it, and then try to see if there's merit to that feedback and if it's something that you need to fix along the way. And gradually you'll get better. You'll learn from your mistakes. But if you can't do that, if you think that, no, I'm the best, I'm as good as it gets, and everybody else is wrong, you're never going to grow. And that's a very stagnant mindset to have. So just always stay humble. Know that you're not perfect, but you'll always get better if you just self-assess.
Cool, man. Well, it is Monday, October 10th when we are recording this. I'm going to try and edit it a little bit tomorrow. I don't know if it'll be up tomorrow or not, but very soon before the end of your campaign. I just wanted to thank you again for stopping in, making time to talk to me, for all your help over the years with Soul Finder, and again for just knocking it out of the ballpark with Soul Finder characters in this summer's crossover, and just even your willingness to even use the characters in your own stories. Speaking of humbling,
I'm grateful you let us use them because your characters are amazing. So it's really cool that you trusted us enough to play in your playground with your toys, basically.
Yeah, man, anytime. You and Tim have a blank check. So, all right, man. Well, I'll let you go for now. Again, congratulations on all the campaigns this year, and best of luck moving forward. I know that I will see you, I think, in December at another show coming up.
Yes.
So,
We're seeing you like for the fourth or fifth time this year.
Yeah.
Keep bumping into each other.
So looking forward to seeing you, and thanks again. I'll talk to you later, man.
Thanks, see you, man.
See ya.